Hey Pete, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, this very awesome soccer coach, Pete Caringi, has been coaching at UMBC for 29 years. And recently, he just set history with his 300th win. How's it feel, Pete?
It's just it's a number. That's all. To be honest with you, obviously, it's a great number, and it's something I think you look back on when you're done coaching, and you'll appreciate it more. Right now, while you're still involved with the team, it's a number that something that obviously you should be proud of.
And you're in the heat of the season now, right?
Yeah, we're in a spring season, and we play once a week, and we have a big game coming up against Stony Brook, and so we're trying to prepare for that. It's a very young team, and a team that's going to be very good. And I like the progress, but every day is a new adventure when you're coaching young players.
Cool. Well, I know with COVID, things have been a little bit different. So this spring season is actually kind of like your substitute fall season, like a miniature version of a fall season.
Yes, and it is different. It's normally, as you know, typically we have a spring season at this time of the year, and which is totally different. You play 5 spring games, and you get a chance to play everybody, and the games don't count. They're really exhibition games. But we really basically have a league right now, and just about everybody in the country's out there playing now. And so we have our America East League, and there's some travel games. It's not as extensive as normal, where we would be traveling like to Vermont, New Hampshire. But at the end, there'll be a tournament, top 4 teams, and whoever wins the America East Championship or whatever other league will go to the NCAA tournament. And I think that's going to be fun for a lot of the fans and even for the players. I think you really see the excitement about players getting the opportunity to play. I think this generation has played so many games, but I think once we had a stoppage of play and with the pandemic, everybody was appreciative of going back out on the field and playing, and you can just see the joy in their faces. The fun is back in the game.
That's awesome that that they put something together for the springtime,
Yeah,
so you guys could still get something in.
yeah. So it's
Cool.
they're going to play in a couple more weeks, and then they'll have a summer to train and have a little vacation, and we'll jump right back in the fall. So it's an interesting times, and as we all know, it's been an interesting last couple, well, 13, 14 months. So
Oh,
I'm
I feel
looking
like we're
forward to.
doubling down now. We're making up for last year because last year nobody really played, and now all the soccer teams that are mostly the main seasons in the fall, even though you guys do play in the spring, now you guys are going to have probably for the first time ever in your career 2 seasons in one year.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping to get things back to normal, as we all, whatever normal is now. But we're excited and fun, and I think it's going to be fun for the guys. So
Cool. Well, today we are going to talk a little bit about college recruiting process. This is, I think, really tough for people who are about to go through it or who are going through it, where to go, what to do, who to talk to, how to go about it. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. When I was going through the process myself, I was the oldest of 4 kids. My youngest sister was only, I think, 4 years old when I was going through the process, and we have a really close family. So one of the things that was a priority for me was trying to stay somewhere close-ish so that my family could come to my games and I could still see them. Um, and now, having gone through the whole college process, I think that although that was really important to me at the time, when I look back on it, I think that I ended up going to a place that was not a great fit for me. I actually ended up transferring halfway through. And I love my coach, but the program was not a good fit for me. And I think there's a lot of questions I could have asked, or things that I should have been looking for, or direction I could have had from somebody that would have helped me go in a better direction, and kind of just help me figure out what it was that was going to make me happy in my college experience. So I would love to hear your thoughts on how do players even start looking for colleges? How do you even start that process?
well, I think you got to get. I think you hit the exact word on. You got to get the right fit. And I think a lot of times, I know now the recruiting process, and I think especially for the women, are starting even earlier and earlier. And I say that because we don't start as early as a lot of even other programs, because one, you're looking for their development through high school, and two, you need the right fit. Is it the right fit? The school, is the coach the right fit? This is all part of the equation, because you can like the school, and if you're going there to play soccer and you don't get along with the coach, or you don't have a feel for it, it's not going to work out. Or if you know, if there's things going through the program right now where you're sitting there and you're going, well, that person doesn't seem happy, that person seems doesn't seem happy. You just try to get as much for the student. You try to get as much information as you can, and from the coaches, it's the same thing. The coaches are looking for the right fit, and if obviously you were a great player and they're looking to bring you in, um, a great player like yourself normally is going to be the right fit. But I think with conversations that we have, even when we're having conversations just one on one with the players, you kind of see where they are. Are they motivated? Are they self motivated? Do you think it's going to be a right fit for the school? What's the basis of why they want to come there? Are they really that big of a player, or are they going to get better as they come through? Because ideally, if you come with me at UMBC, I want you to get better each year, and I want you to get your degree. I have certain goals, but I also want you to have certain goals. I want you to get your degree. Are you coming there just to play soccer? Well, it's not going to work. The school, do you have the right degree for me? Or are you just going there and thinking, well, take anything? 'Cause that's not going to work. So it's got to be the right degree. I think your relationship with the coach is going to be very important. One of the most important aspects of it, because if that doesn't work out, then it's not going to work out no matter what. And I think that's very important. And I think as students coming in, or young players, like I said, you have to set goals and where you want to be and what you want to be doing each and every year. The players who do well understand that, understanding that, hey, I want to go in even my first year, and I want to play, but look at it. There might be a team that's returning every player, and the lineup's basically set. Well, then you might want playing time. So you always have to be changing your goals, at least if you're with me, because the ultimate goal is to be a good team player, and the ultimate goal is for us to win a championship. The main goal is to get your degree, but I'm talking about on the field. It's to win a championship. And how can I contribute that trying to win a championship? If we don't this year, then we want to win it next year. But that goal never changes. And it's basically, how do you as a player fit into that goal, and how hard are you going to work at it? The better you and harder you work, the more likely you're going to play, the happier you'll be. And it's not, as you well know better than anybody, it's not about just playing time in college. It's about working your way in, and keeping your spot once you get on.
What do you think? You mentioned about the academic side of things, and I know that when I was looking at schools, I honestly, I mean, I've become very academic in the time since college, but at the time, I could have honestly cared less. I mean, I always wanted to do well in school. I did well in school, and I worked hard that way. But that was so low on my priority list. I was like soccer, 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 and wanted to play on a good soccer team. And after school, it was going to be, now I'm going to play pro soccer. And I mean, it was such a huge priority for me. And I imagine that you see a lot of that, especially in D1, of these guys that come in and they're just soccer lovers, and academics is the farthest thing from their mind. So what advice do you have for those players who that were like me, that are really just focused on soccer? How do you get them to see another side? Do they need to see another side? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think it's very simple, because what you describe is me. Like when I went to school, I wanted to play soccer. I wanted to play soccer. I had schools that I could pick. I went to University of Baltimore, which at the time was a national power. The year before, they were coming off of a Final Four. I was told by a good friend, you don't want to go there. They got everybody returning. You're never going to play. That was part of the motivation for me to go there. And I played, and I did really well my freshman year, and it started every year. But clearly, everybody has their own reasonings for why they want to do things. And but I was exactly what you said, and I was I wanted to go to school. I wanted to play soccer. The education was a big part of it, but it wasn't a big part of it. My father definitely wanted me to get my degree, but when I was in school, I never seen the importance of the degree until eventually when I got injured and I was continuing to play. What are you going to do afterwards? So if a player like yourself came to UMBC now and spoke to me, I stress the importance of what I know and what I learned, and probably you're the same. By getting the degree, it's opened up so many doors for me to now do what I love to do, and that's coaching and having a good situation. And I know so many players here in the Baltimore area, so many great players who never got their degree, and had the opportunity, and some of them had their education paid for, and it never turned out like it could have or should have. And it was all because no one was there really pushing them to say, okay, as much as I love how you play soccer, you have to get your degree. And because 5 years after you're done playing soccer, you don't have your degree, and you're going out in the job field or even the coaching field, they're going to ask you, do you have it? And if you don't have it, it doesn't matter how well you did on the field. You could have been a four-time All-American. You could have been a four-time national champion. You could have, and there's always going to be some spot where you go for a job or talk to someone, and they're going to ask you if you have your degree. And if you don't have it because you just didn't really work on the academics somewhere along the line, and I've seen it so many times with friends and guys I grew up with. I've seen some of the best soccer players to ever come out of this country that were just didn't understand the importance of education, or no one really stressed it back then. And it was, you're a great player, you're a great player, you're a great player, and then it's over. And then now what do I do?
Yeah.
So that's why I really, really stress that, because I've seen it. And there's never been a player that ever came to UMBC that I never talked to about the importance of the education, along with wanting to play pro and wanting to be a great player and getting the best out of you. But so that would be the conversation we would have. And I think if you have that conversation with the player, then they'll understand it. And if you lived it, they'll understand even more, because I was like you. Okay. And I want to play. But luckily it sunk in, and luckily I got my degree, and it worked out.
Well, I know that statistically, even for people who do end up playing professional sports, I think it's 80% of former professional athletes are broke.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to this right now,
Yeah.
you are going, no matter how good you are, eventually you're going to need to get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting that education is very important.
Yeah, it's really the most important thing. And that's the sad part is, as players, and when you're coming out of high school and you're thinking about going to college, or some think about not going to college, and you can sign big contracts, and you have your future. And look, as players, that's what we wanted to do. That's all, we all wanted to do. And eventually soccer is going to stop. And then eventually, and it's not basketball, it's not football. If you're basketball or football, you're making enough money that the education, Shaquille O'Neal don't need his education. Kobe didn't need to go to school because they made so much money to play their sport. Well, in soccer, I've been living this. I haven't seen really many people that made that much money that through playing, that they didn't have to have something to fall back on. And most of the guys, as we know, most of the really good players, or the guys or girls that played in these leagues, when soccer was over playing, then they probably wanted to even get back into the game. And once again, eventually you have to find ways that, if it's going to be through coaching in universities and colleges, or even high schools, someone's going to ask you if you ever got your degree. So it can always come back. And if you have it, it's going to open up doors, I guarantee you, that you never thought was going to be open up for you. So I've lived that. I've seen it. I've seen both ways. And, I can't stress how important that is to players that have that ability to play. And even if you're going to leave and not go to school, once it's done, there should be some form of a way that you're going to try to get your education, because eventually that's going to come up. Do you have a degree? So
And just to kind of cycle back to something we were talking about earlier, you mentioned that the girls tend to get recruited a little bit earlier than the boys. I know my sister was recruited to go to UNC when she was in eighth grade.
yeah.
So they started recruiting her in eighth grade. I don't think she actually committed until she was a sophomore, which even then was considered a late commitment. So my question is, what advice do you have for like the high level players who are getting recruited early? And then where does that leave the players who are not that top, 5% that are getting that early recruiting? The players that are good players that can play college soccer, but they're not the ones that the coaches are looking at initially. Like, how do
Well,
they
I
even
think
get seen by you?
that's a great question, but I think the ones that aren't seen at an early age, like, look, there's eighth graders I've seen and went, wow, how good, what a great player. But I'd like to see how he developed, physically developed, how he mentally developed. We've all seen players that were great eighth grade players who were never really good college players. They peaked physically, they peaked. Maybe some of them got burnt out. So I'm very weary about recruiting kids that I've never recruited an eighth grade player, and no disrespect to anyone who did. I've obviously at a lot of programs they have the ability to do that, but for us, I'm also always looking for the late bloomer, because that's the person that always seems that to continue to get better. And once that player that maybe he or she went the 11th grade, now all of a sudden people are going, wow, look how good she got, look how good he got, and he's getting better. And that's no disrespect to the great player, like your sister. If I seen her in eighth grade, she was, wow, what a fantastic player. Now you see her in 11th grade, and obviously she's already been recruited. But when you do that nationally, you continue to do that. I think certain schools have the ability to do that, but I would be leery of it only because what happens when the coach who loved you in the eighth grade, if all of a sudden by your 10th grade, you're not performing at that ability, or you're not getting better, or do they still love you? Are they still going to bring you in? Are they still committing to your scholarship? So there's a lot of questions that I would have, one as a parent, and even as a coach. A lot of it works out, but that's why we never did it. We never went that early on. And obviously we've seen so many good young players. But clearly, I think for the player who doesn't get recruited, it doesn't matter for me, because if you continue to get better, I want you to be your best player you can be. We all know, you and I both know, so many players that when they were really young were really, really talented. And that by the time they got to be juniors in high school, they weren't as talented as they should be. And by the time they went to college, never fulfilled their promise. There's a lot of reasons. Some get burnt out, some don't develop, some just get tired of the game. Some all of a sudden, this, they go to college, and soccer was such a big part of their life, and the whole family was involved. And now you go to college, and all of a sudden there's other things to do, and soccer is not number one on your list. So that they just get tired of it, and that's the sad part. So for me, I like that late bloomer. I like the person who's continued to get better and better and better. That in college continues. Like one of our best players, Levy Wapu, who played in MLS and signed. Levy was a great player as a young high school player. Levy was a player in college who continued to get better, and by his senior year was one of the best players in the country. That's what I'd like. He was always a good player, became a great player. And other players were like that too. So for me, that's the kind of player. So to answer your question, that person who's not being recruited as much when they're young, it's still opportunities out there for you, and there's still opportunities to even continue to play at the next level. So it's not like you have to be highly recruited by the time you're in the 8th or 9th grade, and that's part of the problem that we both know, that there's players out there now that make decisions on going to college because they feel pressured into, oh my God, if I don't, I heard everybody else on the team is going this here or going here. Well, what about my child? no, there's a spot for you, and there's an opportunity to be successful both on and off the field. So there's no need to panic for sure.
Well, for those kids that are, um, I'm curious what advice you have for kids who do not, I mean, how are you supposed to see them if they're not at the tournament that you guys are watching? You
Well, they
know,
have to
like,
be. I mean, you hope that they're at the tournament. You hope that. I mean, there's one of our best players we had that played Final Four. Our left back, Jordan Becker from the Eastern Shore. You know, Jordan was a great player. It never really went to the tournaments. Wasn't seen as much. You know, people start calling me about him. I went to go see him. You know, wow, he was a good player, and he came and he had a great career, and eventually had a chance to play professional. So he's the player that we're talking about. You know,
mhm.
junior year not really being seen, senior year not getting the calls that you like, but now starting to play. Obviously, the better you're seen, the easier it is going to be opportunities for you to get scholarships and to get the opportunities to play. But there's been a lot of cases, a lot where they didn't get seen or they didn't play on the right club team. But if you have the energy and if you have the determination, you're going to be seen eventually by somebody, and talent eventually is going to take over no matter where you go play. So I think there's so many stories of players, boys and girls, that had the chance and went to the right school, the right fit.
Mhm.
And I'm sure if Jordan Becker goes somewhere else, he may not have had the career that he had with us. And it's just fortunate for him and for us. So I think
And
that's
that
why you
puts
have to find
people,
the right place. Maybe you don't go to a school that's returning, 6 All-Americans and was on the Final Four the year before, and everybody's returning and think, well, I'm going to go in there. And, he didn't see
unless
me.
you're Pete Caringi.
Yeah, no, unless you're Alec. But that's really, really where you go. And for me personally, it was the challenge. It was the challenge of they were all there, and when someone told me that they didn't think I could play there, that was the challenge. And no, I took it as a
That's all
personal
you needed
challenge.
to hear.
That's all I needed to hear. And nobody knew that story until years later. But yeah, that's all I needed to hear.
Well, I tell my players to cast a wide net, figure out exactly what you're looking for, do your research on the schools. Once you have, a handful of schools that you think you would like in a location that you think you'd like, then you start emailing their coaches once a week. I tell my players, email their entire coaching staff once a week, tell them who you are, how you're very interested in their school, and then every week just check back in like, hey coach, I've been practicing really hard. This is my tournament schedule. I hope you can make a game. And then next week, hey coach. And the more you can touch base and make them feel like you're really interested in their school, the more likely they are going to be to reach out and try to make something happen to come see you. And then the other thing they can do is most schools, I think, now have ID camps where you can go in and actually play at a camp at the school right in front of the coach.
You gave him expert advice. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. What you said was spot on. So, send information to coaches, go to an ID camp. Right now, we're all through this pattern of we can't go. We're trying to get ID camps back on campuses. Our recruiting right now has been at a stall. So it's the toughest time ever to even be seen by coaches, Division I coaches for sure, because we're not allowed to go to games yet. And that's been a long time. So this class coming out now is we're getting more calls and emails than ever. People want to be seen. So I think obviously you do your homework and knowing that the pandemic's there and coaches can't come out and see you, and try to find the right fit for you. And
should players
but
be sending in, now with the pandemic, should players be sending in videos
yes,
to
I mean,
coaches?
that's what when someone asked me about a player, I say, try to get a video. Game film is a necessity almost, and now everybody can do that. Even
Do
if
you
you have your,
like a game film, or do you like, I know some people like to do like a highlight reel.
well,
They'll
a
just do
highlight reel,
highlights
if
of
it's a
them
good
playing.
one, because as you know, as well as I do, like I watched some highlight reels today, and it was of a goal scorer, and it was of 18, it was probably 18 seconds, and he took one shot and he didn't score. So it wasn't a highlight film, but clearly You have to have something that's shows what you can do. And if you're a forward and you're a goal scorer, then show us some of your goals, and just try to highlight, send us something that we can look at and be impressed with. I can show you, Ali, some of the tapes or game films where it's really bad, or it's not, you can't even, you don't even know who the player is with the number,
So you're
and
saying before someone sends it in, they should get maybe a second opinion.
yes, yes, yes. Oh, no doubt, yes.
Make
But
sure that it
yeah,
is
and
a
it
highlight
is,
film.
and nowadays it's real important that you get that information out to the coaches, because we're not seeing people play, and you know eh, the last year has been probably the roughest time in I've ever seen in all the years I've been doing, as far as players not being seen, players and their parents being frustrated, understandable, coaches, not being able to go out and recruit. And really, a lot of the schools, it's all virtual. People are sending out virtual videos of their school because no one's coming on campus. There's no one there. So it's really been a difficult time. Understandably, these kids everybody's frustrated with it, but be persistent, and like you said, pick 5 schools, send information, be persistent, send emails. If you have a game, let the coaches know. If you're, even though we can't go see it, maybe it's on stream or something. We just we can't be there. And then if there's an ID camp in the summer, try to go, or in the spring, whatever you can do to be seen, try to do it. And if you can't be seen, then once again, it's a decision that you have to make. But what you don't want to do is, like, I know from my standpoint, I don't want players to come to UMBC. Well, I'm going to go 1 year and then I'm going to leave. I want you to stay, and I want you to get your degree, and I want you to have a good situation for 4 years. So this time right now, it's difficult, but it's conversations will always work out. But you had great advice. You obviously how it works.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, one last thing I wanted to see if you could touch on for us, which is I have players a lot of times that say, like, I'm going to go to D2 because they think D3 is too low for them and D1 is too high for them, and D2 being in the middle is a better fit. Or, I hear players that say, I'm going to go D3, I'm not good enough to play D1. Or, I hear a lot of different opinions on D1, D2, D3. And what I tell people is it's much more a matter of what kind of commitment level you want when you get to college, because there is a range of D1 schools. You can go play for the best of the best and be one of the most highly recruited players in the country. And there's lower level D1 schools that are not very competitive, but they play year round, and the leagues that they play in are not competitive. It's not like, playing and for women's soccer, like UNC in the ACC, very, very competitive. Like my sister just came out of, but not every D1 league is like that. So if you want the D1 experience and you're a reasonably good player, you could probably find a school that will fit you. D3 is a little bit more, I would say, caters more to like multi-sport athletes, or athletes that are more interested in one season and not the next necessarily year-round commitment. D2 offers scholarships, not as high as D1, but maybe some high-level D2 schools could compete with some lower-level D1 schools. So that is kind of what I've seen, but I would love to hear what you have to say about it, because you're in it right now.
I think you hit, once again, you have good points. I think there is a difference on the men's side, women's side, because there's more women's programs. So I think for the range of Division One, it's probably some teams and programs where it's a little bit, you can get on a team, and like you said, that the range of ACC versus non-ACC. I think now I probably would have said that when I first started with the men's side, but the men's side has become so competitive, and like a lot of sports, it's the mid majors now have grown. A lot of schools are investing facilities. So there's not really any teams or programs now where I can sit there and say, well, maybe a handful, or they're really not committed to soccer. So I think there has been, like our league in itself, America East, we were one of the top four leagues in the country a couple years ago. It just says everybody's kind of fluctuating. So I
Okay.
think that there is a level that will fit every player. And truly, I totally agree with you. Is it Division I, Division II, Division III? Something that you as a player should look into before you even get started. Try to be realistic in where you want to go. You knew, and your sister knew, at a young age, how your commitment to soccer and how well you were doing, and people were looking at you and people were aware of you, and now people start recruiting you. So you're looking at a little bit different than a person who maybe just is a very average player who is looking for a school and a program to play. We've had players that come to our school that were good players, not great players, who became better players. But they had to work. It took 3 years. They had to sit the bench. They had to go through a process. But like for a program like us, I mean, we've been in the Final Four a couple of years ago. We like to think that we're at a national level, but we understand what we have and we understand what we don't have. And I think a lot of programs are like that. But when you're looking at it from a young player's perspective, there is a Division I, II, III that will fit you and your needs. And once again, be in perspective of how good you are. I always say, if you're in a high school team and you're not starting on your high school team, and you call and you say, well, I want to play Division I, well, let's be realistic. More than likely, you're not going to play or even make the team or even get a walk-on tryout.
Because
So you're
they get
better off.
so entrenched in wanting to just play in college and the idea of getting onto this team that they don't realize that once they're there, they have 4 years of this. And if it's
Yes,
not a good situation,
they're
it's
not
going to
going to
be
be
a bad
happy.
experience.
Yes, I had one example, and it's great, but because I had a guy who was a good player and local in Maryland, and he was so much wanted to come. This is when our team was right before we just won 2010, 2000. He wanted to come to school so bad, UMBC, and he kept calling me and I didn't, like we had a lot of our team, and he was so persistent. 6 times he called me. So finally, it was the first time I ever did this. And I said, look, you've been so persistent that you've been calling me. You want to play here so bad. Let's meet. So I met with him, kind of gave him all the perimeters of, what we know. You're probably not going to play. I've seen you play club. I've seen you play in high school. You made some all county and all that, but I don't think but you're this persistent. You want to come to school here. We'll give you a try. He came, he made the team. He was so happy to make it. We're winning championships. We go to the Final Four. He's on the team. But clearly, it was never, by the time from his freshman year to his senior year, he wanted to know why he wasn't playing. Well, the players in front of him were better. And clearly, he knew that all along. But his wanting to be part of it was so important to him his first year that we put him on the team. By his senior year, he just never was as good as the other players. And clearly that's something that, becomes a concern, because then you become unhappy and you don't want players unhappy. You
I'll
want
tell you,
them.
that reminds me of this movie, and I'll probably get fried alive for saying this because I know this is just one of those epic movies that people love, but I absolutely hated Rudy.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, this poor guy is in college all this time. He gets to play one game, and that's like,
Yeah.
wow. But I mean, like, I know it's a great sports story, whatever, but I'm like, man, why wouldn't you want to go play somewhere you can play all the time and just have
Yeah,
fun playing the game that you love?
yeah. And I just think I think that's the key. I think define what's the right, you said it in the very first sentence you said, find the right fit. What's the right fit for you, and that you're going to be happy or you're going to be satisfied. And if I'm going to go to a big time school and I get a chance to try out and I'm there, well, I have to understand that I'm going to have to play at a certain level to get on the field. And if I really want to be on the field and be happy, then I'm going to train every day. I'm going to train in the summer. My commitment, the commitment to be a great player. For me, if you come into UMBC, I want a commitment. I want the same commitment you're going to have that you had to go to UNC, because I want you to be a great player, and I want to be as successful as you were, and your team was. So where are you going? Who are you playing for? Maybe someone else will just be happy that you're on a team, or maybe another coach would just be satisfied that you play and you're happy. So you got to find that feel, and you do
And
it in
know that like
conversation.
whatever is how you feel, like however you feel is okay. You know,
Yeah,
my
sure.
brother, he played Stevenson University. Me and my sister, we have had a lot of recognition with soccer with our careers just because we were both big goal scorers and all that kind of thing around here in Baltimore. But my brother, a lot of people don't know, my brother is a really big soccer player, and he played Stevenson University. He could have easily gone D1.
Yeah,
He is very good, but
just be happy.
he played Stevenson. He loved it, and in the springtime, he would tailgate lacrosse games and party with his buddies. I mean, he didn't want to have this like all-consuming year-round experience. He liked it in the fall. He was all in, and then when the fall was over, it was time to sit back and have some fun, and that's more what he wanted out of his college experience.
And there's thousands of student athletes that had that same experience that he had, and had a good experience. And that's the bottom line. The bottom line is when you're done and you get your degree, and you have your degree, and you've played soccer or you played a sport, how was the experience? It was a good experience. I enjoyed it. I had fun. I learned. I have friends for life, as you all know. Through college, it's one of the greatest times of your life,
Hmm.
and I have lifelong friends. And you know, 20 years later, first two things. One, on championship pictures, I always say you never see a person who's not happy when they're taking the championship picture on the field. And two, 20 years later, no one sits there when you have reunions and everyone gets back and friends and says, oh, well, she played only 14 minutes, or she only played 2 games, or she was the All-American and she was the best. Everybody's back to just have fun, and you enjoy it and you have memories, and the memories are entailed with everybody. So that's the fun part of the sports. And you go there and you understand that you're going to try as hard as you can, and you enjoy it, and you enjoy your friends, and they're friends for life, and they're going to be in your weddings, and they're going to be, and that's college athletics. That's how it's always been. And I hopefully it'll continue to stay like that.
Well, I really appreciate you coming and talking to us a little bit about the college process and recruiting. I hope that people who are watching us can find this a little bit helpful as they go through their process.
Thank you for having me.